The founder and chairman of KC Research is with me now. He's also the author of his most recent book, Right on the Money, and he's the producer of a new documentary called Meltdown America. Doug, KC, thanks for being back with us.
Well, it's always a pleasure, Daniela. Thank you.
Well, Doug, the theme of this year's conference is Big Brother here, and you do not have a cell phone, do not have Instagram, do not have Twitter, do not have Facebook. So it's practically impossible to get a hold of you, Doug. Now, do you think Big Brother is here, and what can one do to protect themselves?
Well, I don't have those things particularly as a protest against Big Brother, who is here. I have them because they're a nuisance, and I have other things to do with my time other than watch some electronic device 24 hours a day. But so that's my feeling on those things. But sure, Big Brother's absolutely here. And he's getting bigger. He's going to keep getting bigger until he eventually collapses because he's gotten too big. And good riddance.
Now, Doug, I know you've been busy with the book, with the documentary Meltdown America, and you're also really well traveled. You spend your time in Argentina, New Zealand, and the U.S., and your documentary looks at Yugoslavia's failed state and inflation issues. You caution this could happen in the U.S., Doug. So is inflation an imminent threat to the U.S.?
Yes, and the reason for that is this so-called quantitative easing, which is really just money printing. It's amazing how the powers that be have captured the vocabulary and use words against us. And the average chimpanzee out there doesn't say money printing, which is what it's historically always been called. They call it quantitative easing. It sounds so much better. But up until recently, the Federal Reserve was creating 75 billion new dollars every month, buying U.S. government paper and crediting the U.S. government's account with that many commercial dollars, that many dollars at commercial banks. So most of that money right now is still sitting in financial institutions. It's sitting in insurance companies, banks, brokerage firms. But it's finding its way into broader society. And at some point, we're going to see an explosion in retail price inflation.
Now, Doug, what could that mean for gold?
It's a good value now. It's a good value. And gold is going to go a lot higher because, as I always like to say in every interview, to draw this to people's attention, gold is the only financial asset that's not simultaneously somebody else's liability. And in a world that's as over-financialized as the one we're in right now, it's going to come back to having the actual physical metal, physical money in your hand.
I recently had Mark Faber on, and I had asked him if he thought the boat had left a dock for gold, and his answer was he didn't think there was a dock anymore. What do you think of that?
I think that we're entering upon a period here over the next decade, actually, that's going to be one of the most serious and tumultuous times in Western history. This is going to be much more serious than what happened in the 1930s and the 1940s.
Let's end this interview now on the topic of gold manipulation. This was a big year for the manipulation issue. We saw a huge study regarding the London gold fix take place, and now the silver fix is gone. Any thoughts on this, Doug?
Well, there's this meme that's been circulating that gold and silver have been suppressed. I consider that to be ridiculous. Manipulation is one thing. Everybody always tries to manipulate everything. That's what human beings do, is try to manipulate reality. And participants in financial markets constantly manipulating things. This is nothing new, and there's nothing wrong with it. The problematical mean is where they say gold is being suppressed. I find that counter-factual and actually rather ridiculous. Because if you look at gold, since 1971, when it was delinked from the dollar, it's been among the best performing commodities. Even now, it's done much better than copper or cocoa or soybeans or cattle, much better. So if gold has been suppressed in price, everything should be suppressed that way. So there's a lot more to be said about it, but the people that are talking about gold price suppression lose credibility, I think, with people that understand actual markets. Because in those days, the governments owned most of the gold. Today, they own a much smaller proportion of a much larger number of ounces of gold out there. And in those days, the governments weren't bankrupt. Now they're all bankrupt. So they don't have the power to do that. They can't do it. It's ridiculous.
All right, good thoughts, Doug Casey. Finally, besides gold, any investments you're really liking these days?
If I was going to speculate on something that had huge returns and low risk, I would say go short Japanese bonds denominated in yen, because the Japanese are further along the path of destroying the yen, their currency, than the Americans are in destroying the dollar. And bonds themselves are a triple threat to your capital, interest rates being at 30, 40, actually all-time historic lows. They're going up at this point. And of course, speculate in decent little junior mining stocks.
As always, really good thoughts from you today, Doug. Thank you so much for being with me.
My pleasure, Danielle. Thank you.
Enjoy the conference, and thanks for watching our coverage here from FreedomFest. We'll have more for you. In the meantime, you can email us comments and questions at newsfeedback@kitco.com. Thanks for watching.